Back at it today, working on the Ford. I took it for a short ride the other day out on a more main road, and besides the tires being so flat spotted that it was actually shaking the entire truck, the alternator belt broke and the power steering belt started making tons of noises, so both of those need to get changed. The alternator is not hard to get at. Sorry about that. You see the bolt right there. That's got to loosen up. And there's one up above a little bit that's got to loosen up. But I can't budge this lower bolt. It's really, really stuck. So I'm going to do something that is rarely a good idea. And that is to use a reducer on my breaker bar down to 3/8, so I can get the a longer leverage on the nut, and see if I can get this thing off, because it's crazy tight. Now, what can happen? Well, bad things. When you put this much leverage on a bolt this size, I can snap it off. So I'm going to try not to do that. Worst case, if I really can't get it loosened up, I'm going to put heat on it. But I don't want to do that unless I have to, because it might ruin the alternator. So let me try to get this on there. It's not easy when holding the phone. Give me 1 second. I'll put this on there and see if with all this leverage I can get this bolt out without snapping it. So here we go. So I'm on there. I've got plenty of leverage. Oh boy, this is so tight. Crazy tight. I think I'm going to have to use heat, guys. Okay, let me get the torch ready. My preferred type of gas to use is MAP gas. It's much hotter than propane. Propane has its uses, but I never have good luck with it in situations like this. It takes too long to heat up. The idea here is to heat the alternator, not the bolt. So I'm going to try to aim the heat at the back of the alternator. I don't know if I can get this down in there or not. I have to be super careful because the low radiator hose is there. So I'm going to put a steel plate in between where I'm working and the radiator hose so I don't inadvertently melt it. All right, let's give this a try. Getting the torch going. I'm going to have to put the phone down while I do this, but I'll get back to you. Well, that was not fun, but I got it loose. I took the smog pump out of the way and had to loosen up that bolt right there. And this is the one I was trying to get at earlier, down here. And they were tight. Whew. I ended up having to heat both, not the bolt heads, but where they thread in. And even then, it was still tough. But it's loose. Now, because the alternator pulley is the first one on, I have to disconnect the power steering next. But I'm going to change that belt anyway, so that's okay. Power steering was kind of a hassle as well. See that long bolt there? That one has to loosen up. And this one underneath that I had to loosen up. And this one was tough, really tough. to get loose. Unfortunately, neither of the belts I bought fit the power steering nor the alternator. I can't be too tough on the auto parts store because this thing has a weird setup. Somebody added this AC unit later, so the whole belt configuration is messed up. But I found this old guy hanging on my wall. I don't know when that's from, but it's old. And it fits the alternator perfectly. And it's a new belt. It's been sitting around for a while, but it's a new belt, but it fits perfectly. So that's in. Can't finish up because of the power steering belt, so I'll have to get back to that. Now moving on to this smog pump. I'd like to remove it. It's sticking. It's not seized, but it's sticking. I don't know what it means to remove it, so I'm going to play with it and see. First, I'm going to disconnect this hose. There's a valve in there that comes off the base of the carburetor. I don't know if that valve is one way. I think it is. And if it's one way, I should be able to just disconnect this without a problem, but we'll see. So the pump is off. This is what it looks like. And this is what goes, a hose comes off of this and goes to the base of the carburetor. This pump, like I say, it's not seized, but it's pretty bad. You can see, just turning it, it squeaks like crazy. So I took this hose off here, and I took it off at the base of the carburetor, and what I found is, it is a one-way valve. You can push air into it, but not pull out, but it's not completely sealed. I was able to pull a little bit of air out just by sucking on it a little bit. But anyway, so that's not necessarily good. I've got this cap, and I'm just going to put the cap over it and see how it goes, how it runs, how it drives. Maybe I'll put it all back together. But it looks like I can just plug that thing off. It looks like what the pump did was it took fresh air and pumped it into the base of the carburetor, likely for emissions purposes. Sort of like an EGR does, but EGR is recirculating exhaust gas rather than fresh air. And here's the EGR. So this thing has both. I mean, this is just a maze of vacuum wires and vacuum hoses and potential leaks, and it's unbelievable. This is so typical of 70s and 80s vehicles, unfortunately. And there is still a vacuum leak here at the base of the carb. I haven't dealt with that yet. I'm gonna have to make the carb gasket. For some reason, I can't get it. They say you can order it. I order it and it never arrives, so I'm just gonna make it. But that's not a task for today. So what I'm gonna do is just take this plug and push it right over this end. Go. It's plugged. I'm willing to bet, now that that's on there, that this runs a whole lot better and certainly doesn't have this ridiculous smog pump setup. This bracket is going to go next. There's no reason to keep it. So far, so good. Even though I can't replace the power steering hose, power steering belt, at least I have it. I can bring it to the auto parts store and match it. The alternator belt broke and came apart into multiple pieces, most of which I couldn't find. So I couldn't do that with the alternator belt. But because I found one on my wall that works, I'm good there. So far, so good. Since I can't finish the belts right now because the belts aren't the right size, I've got to replace this. The way this truck starts is you turn the key on, you reach under the dash here, and you flick this switch to engage the starter. The problem is that this switch it's not a momentary switch. So, you know, that someone inexperienced or whatever is not going to realize the starter is still engaged while the engine is running. That'll cause all kinds of problems. I need a switch here. I don't like this setup to begin with, but I'm going to leave it. I need a switch here that's a momentary switch. And that's what this is. This is a momentary, a push button switch. You push it in, it's engaged. You let it out, it's not engaged. So I push it in to engage the starter, let it out. Starter stops. Doesn't stick. This is the right switch to use in a situation like this. And you know, this is how vehicles started for decades back in the day. I think I had a 59 Buick and it still had a switch like this, although it was under the gas pedal. Early 50s trucks had it on the dash. So even my 50 Chevy actually had it on the dash, my 50 Chevy passenger car. So I'm going to put this in. Very simple. It's 2 wires, right? Come down and go right to the starter from power. And I'm just going to wire them to these 2 terminals here and then mount the switch with this nut. And we'll see how that goes. Switch is now in, and you can see just a press of the button and it's turning over. No more switch sticking on or being left on or anything like that. So that took about 10 minutes. I had a switch in a box that I hadn't used in a while, and that's out of the way. So we're knocking things down one by one today. Another project I've knocked out for today. This truck was had a hit in the front at some point, and this piece was all smashed out. Behind it, this was broke, separate piece. So I ordered a new one. You can get these new online. They're super cheap. Got the correct one that's actually gray inside. And it's on. I'm happy with it. I've got enough of the dent in the fender out so that it actually matches pretty well. Looks pretty good. The fender is not perfect, not even close. I'll work on it more later. I just wanted to get it close enough so I could get this in. Fits real good. Of course, it looks a lot better than the rest of the grill, but it looks good. Nice match. Really quality part. I'm very happy with the part. And the directional piece was good as well. So all good. Making a lot of progress today on this truck, and just getting a lot of little stuff out of the way. And one more thing. It just screws on. That's how you attach this thing. It's very, very simple. You don't have to take the grill off in case you have to do this job. Screw here, screw there. Screw here, there, one under there that's super long, really, really long, and then one up here. And that's the whole thing. Then it just comes out. 80 is gray. I think 81 is gray, and the rest are black. So if you order one, make sure you get the right one. Back at it again, trying to figure out the right belt. Looks like I've got the alternator belt that works. So if you have a setup like this, this is the one you need. Goes over the lower pulley, the water pump, and the alternator. So that one's done. Now on to the power steering. All right, final. The first time since I've owned this truck, I don't have any belt noise. The alternator belt broke, power steering belt was squeaking, AC belt was squeaking, but now it's good. So here's the 2 belts that I use. 15530 was for the power steering, 155410 was for the alternator. So nice now to have this thing quiet. Without all that noise, it's really comfortable.